Hey there, this is Elena with Black Sheep 303 Creative, and my project today is for Elizabeth Craft Designs. I am using the Rowhouses stamp set along with the Dream Sentiment stamp set to create a really cute postage stamp scene. It's kind of whimsical and funky. So that is the Rowhouses stamp set. It's so cute. I absolutely love it. And I have a piece of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch white 85-pound white soft finish cardstock, and I have sort of sketched a horizon line and then a windy road in pencil onto this piece of paper. And now I'm going to stamp 2 of the row houses and the little coffee shop onto the front to create this little scene. And then I'll make some masks for the buildings out of Post-it notes and stamp trees around them. Now the set comes with 2 different, there's like a single tree and then there's a little grouping of trees. So I used all of them, and then I used the grouping of trees kind of strangely in the back, but we'll get to that in a minute. So I'm just stamping the trees around. And then up in the back, you know, things get smaller as they recede. So there are 2 smaller trees with this grouping of 3, but there's one really big tree too. Well, so I didn't want the big tree. So I'm inking it up, and then I'm taking a baby wipe and I'm cleaning off the ink that's on the large tree. And then on this last one, I'm going to take off the 2 larger trees and just leave the middle small tree. Now, of course, this only gives me about 2/3 of the tree, because a lot of it is cut off because it's overlapped by that larger tree. So basically I took a pencil and kind of sketched the tree's shape back in, and then went over that with a Copic liner to kind of complete those trees. So it's a little bit of a cheater method with the stamps, but I did want to show you that that is something that you can do with stamps. Like if you don't have maybe the right size or the right shape, you can kind of mess with them to make it work. And then I just filled in the horizon line and the road with my Copic liner to sort of complete my scene. And now I'm going to color it, and I'm going to be using my Prismacolor Premier colored pencils and some odorless mineral spirits, which is basically generic Gamsol. So I wanted to make this pretty whimsical and fun. I wanted the buildings to be super colorful. I wasn't going for realism at all. I was sort of thinking, I don't know, this would be kind of like a funky, artsy, dream-like sort of landscape, to kind of let your dreams take flight sort of idea. So I went with a lot of really kind of kooky colors. So this coffee shop building winds up being tones of gray and blue, and then I had a little bit of an accent of purple, and then yellow becomes an accent on this as well. So there you can see a lot of the blue and some of the yellow. This little coffee shop building gets messed with a lot by the end. I changed it quite a bit because I'm never super happy with it. But I did add some shading with multiple tones of whatever color I was working with. So with the blue, I had a light blue and then a darker blue. With my greens, I have about 4 different shades of green that I kind of mess with to add shading to the trees and different colors to the various trees to get some depth of color in those areas. Now, again, I wasn't going for realism because, this stamp set isn't super realistic. It's really cute and fun and kind of sketchy. So I wanted to go with that feeling for the scene. And I'm just kind of blending everything together with my pencil stump and the Gamsol as I'm going, or the faux Gamsol. Now my 2 row houses, I did make kind of an ombre effect. So I started off with a darkest shade of pink. Then I went to a middle shade of pink for the 2nd story. I went to a lighter shade of pink for the 3rd story. And then for the 4th story, I went with a light orange. And then to add shading to those, I basically used sort of the same colors. So for the 2nd story, I used the pencil shade from the 1st story as the shadow color. And for the 3rd story, I used the color from the 2nd story as the shadow color, and so on and so forth. Now, obviously, the orange I added a separate color, and the darkest pink I added a different color as well. But that's kind of how I got my shading. And then I added little accents of green and yellow. And in the end, I will actually have some additional accents of yellow and some blue. So yellow kind of becomes the color that links all the buildings together in the end, as well as a little bit of green, because there's some green here and there too. And then on my third building, I'm going to go with shades of purple. So I'm going to do the same sort of ombre effect, going from dark to light on that building, as you can see here. And I'm, again, just adding in some shading with the colors exactly like I did on the pink building. And then once I get all my purple done, I'm going to add in some yellow on this as well, because I love purple and yellow together. That is a complementary color scheme, and it's one of my favorites, so I could not resist. And, you know, I pulled the yellow in from the other two buildings as well. And then for like a really kooky accent on this building, I added in some basically like turquoisey green, like aquamarine kind of color. And I started out doing that very lightly, and then I went darker. And so that is always a good rule of thumb if you're worried. Start out light. You can always go darker, but you cannot go lighter if you go too dark. So that's kind of my general rule of thumb whenever I'm concerned about trying out a color. Just start light. And the windows I kind of all used gray in with some like a little bit of shading here and there, because this was like a daytime scene. And you can see I'm kind of adding in some additional shadows here and there. And I'll finish up my trees. And then I'm going to go to my grass. Now you can see I've added a lot of shading on my trees, and they do get darker as they recede in the distance. You know, slightly realistic, not super realistic. And then I did kind of mess with my coffee shop a little bit again. But then that was kind of the completed look once I got all this done. Now for my grass, I basically like scribbled all over the grassy part with 3 different shades of green. And I literally scribbled. And I did not blend it. Like, I liked that scribbly look. And you'll see when you see the finished one that I did kind of add some additional shading along the road. I colored the road in with some beige grays and the blue sky with like a very light blue. Now, additionally, you're going to need a frame cut from 85-pound soft finish white cardstock. And to do that, you use the largest die in the Postage Stamp Rectangles dies, and then fit the second largest fitted rectangles die inside of that to cut that white frame, and it works just perfectly. And then that blue panel is from the True Blue soft finish cardstock, and that's 4 3/8 by 5 11/16. Now I've stamped a little heart from the Dream Sentiment stamp set into my sky, and I've also stamped Explore on some white cardstock, and I'm going to turn my little heart into a balloon in the sky. Now it did run a little bit when I stamped it, I think because of the colored pencils didn't like the ink very much. And now I'm just adding a string and a little knot, and then I will color it red, and I'll smooth it out with the Gamsol, and then I'm going to add some glossy accents to it to give it a little bit of dimension. Now my Ladybug red cardstock that I wanted to use behind my Explore greeting as a banner wound up being a little bit too orange for my heart. So I took the colored pencil that I used to color the heart, and then I took and as well as a pink colored pencil, and I sort of just scribbled on top of the soft finish cardstock, and that has a really nice texture to it, and it picks up just a bit of that color, and it allowed me to change the color of the cardstock just a touch to get it to coordinate a little bit better with that heart. So I wanted to show you that you can do that kind of thing if your cardstock doesn't quite match. Now to make my banner, I am scoring like angled lines on either side of my greeting, and then you score it, so you fold it back and then you fold it forward in kind of like a triangular shape to get the banner to the front, and then to cut the fishtail, so there I'm bending it back, and then I'm going to bend it forward in like a little bit of a triangular fold. And then to get my fishtail, I'm going to cut up the middle with my scissors, and then I will cut from the corner to that middle and from the other corner to the middle, and that's how you get your fishtail. Now I did want to mention that this banner and this greeting are larger here than what they wind up being. So I do trim them down to only 3/8 inches wide. The length remains the same, which is 4 inches on the banner and 2 on the greeting, but I did kind of trim the width down to make them skinnier, to fit with the scene better. Now to adhere the frame to the scene, I'm using 3mm clear double-sided adhesive tape, which fit just perfectly on the frame. But the frame's a little tricky to line up, so I did wind up taking just the backing off the top piece, lining up the sides and then pressing down the top to make sure I got it in place. And then I just peeled each piece individually off to get it stuck down correctly in place. I've got an A2 size card base that's going to fit inside that blue sort of matte panel, which is bigger. And now I'm just adhering all of this down to the card base, and that was using the 10mm adhesive. And now my banner and my greeting have 6mm adhesive on the back, and I'm just going to stick those in place. Now I should have put some foam dots on the back of my Explorer had I thought about it, but I didn't. So I'm doing it now with some tweezers, and that worked just as well. And that's the completed project. You know, not a super complicated project today, but really fun. And I had a great time coloring this little scene. It's a great, really whimsical, sort of funky scene to color. So hopefully I've given you a little inspiration on a way you could use that really, really cute rowhouses stamp set to create a fun postage stamp card. Thank you so much for watching. As always, you can find a supply list linked in the video description below or over on my blog. If you liked the video, I'd love it if you give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I would be thrilled if you would subscribe. You can also follow me on Instagram at blacksheep303. Thanks so much. Have a great day.